At my sister's wedding, I raised a glass to toast her, but before I could speak, my aunt cut me off and said, "Sit down, no one cares what you have to say." The room fell silent, and that's when I decided exactly how I'd make them all remember this night forever. I, 32M, stood there with the champagne glass halfway to my lips, my hand frozen in midair as my aunt's words echoed through the suddenly quiet reception hall. The DJ had cut the music at just the wrong moment, and her sharp voice carried to every corner of the room. 200 guests stared at me, some with pity, most with curiosity, a few with barely concealed amusement. My sister sat at the head table in her white dress, her face flushed red, though whether from embarrassment or anger I couldn't tell. Her new husband looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. My aunt, however, looked triumphant, her arms crossed over her chest as she waited for me to slink away like a scolded dog. I lowered my glass slowly and sat down. But I didn't slink. I smiled. Because what my aunt didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for exactly this kind of moment. Not this specific scenario, but something close enough. I knew how my family worked. I knew how they treated me. And I had finally decided I was done being their punching bag. Let me back up a bit so you understand how we got here. I was the middle child, which already put me at a disadvantage. My older brother was the golden boy, the one who got into an Ivy League school and now worked in finance in New York. My younger sister, the bride currently pretending to study her champagne glass rather than look at me, was the baby, the princess who could do no wrong. And then there was me, the one who chose a state school, who became a teacher instead of a lawyer or doctor, who never quite measured up to the family's expectations. For years, I had been the butt of every family joke, the one whose achievements were downplayed and whose failures were magnified. When my brother bought his first luxury car, the family group chat exploded with congratulations for days. When I bought my modest Honda, my dad made a comment about how at least it was reliable transportation. When my sister got engaged, my mother cried tears of joy and immediately started planning. When I had gotten engaged 3 years ago, my aunt asked if we were sure we wanted to rush into things. That engagement ended, by the way. My fiancée left me after my family spent an entire Thanksgiving dinner making jokes about my salary and my career choice, with her sitting right there. She told me later that she couldn't imagine marrying into a family that treated me with such casual cruelty. I couldn't even argue with her. But I stayed in touch with my family. I showed up to events. I smiled through the barbs and the dismissals because they were my family, and some part of me kept hoping things would change. They never did. 6 months ago, during the engagement party for my sister, something inside me finally snapped. My aunt, the same one who had just publicly humiliated me, had pulled me aside and told me that my sister had specifically requested I not be part of the wedding party. She wanted our brother to walk her down the aisle since our father had passed away 2 years prior, and she wanted her friends as bridesmaids, not me standing there in an ill-fitting suit reminding everyone of the family's disappointment. My aunt had delivered this news with a smile, as if she were doing me a favor by letting me know in advance. She suggested I could still help out with setup, maybe handle parking for guests. I told her I would think about it, and excused myself. I went home that night and made a decision. I was done being their doormat. But I wasn't going to just cut them off or make a scene. No, I was going to be strategic. I started digging. You see, when you're the ignored middle child, you notice things. You hear conversations people forget you're present for. You see things people assume you're too unimportant to remember or understand. And I had been noticing things about my family for 32 years. I started with my aunt. She was a real estate agent, very successful, very proud of her 7-figure income. She loved to brag about her sales, her awards, her professional reputation. What she didn't like to talk about was how she had achieved some of those sales. I had overheard a conversation at a family barbecue 2 years ago where she had laughed with her husband about convincing an elderly client to sell their home for well below market value, then flipping it herself for a massive profit. She had called it a smart business move. I reached out to that elderly client's grandson. He was more than happy to talk to me about what had happened to his grandfather, how my aunt had pressured him while he was grieving his wife, how she had assured him the price was fair when it wasn't. He had suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known how to prove it. I connected him with a lawyer friend of mine who specialized in elder law. The investigation was ongoing, but I had copies of everything. Then there was my brother, the golden child who could do no wrong. He worked in finance, but what the family didn't know was that his firm was currently under investigation for some creative accounting practices. I had found out through a college friend who worked in financial journalism. My brother wasn't directly implicated yet, but he was close enough to the center of it that when the story broke, his name would be mentioned. I had all the articles queued up, all the public filings downloaded and organized. My sister was trickier. She seemed clean on the surface, the perfect princess. But then I remembered something from her college years. She had graduated with honors, had been accepted to a prestigious graduate program, had built her entire professional reputation on her academic achievements. Except I knew the truth about her honors thesis. I knew because I had helped her with it, had practically written half of it when she was too busy partying to finish it herself. I had copies of all our email exchanges, all the drafts with my edits. Everything that would prove her crowning academic achievement was partially plagiarized from her own brother's work. I wasn't proud of helping her cheat, but I was going to use it. And finally, there was my mother. Sweet, devoted mother who always took everyone else's side, who had never once defended me when I was being mocked or dismissed. She had a secret too. She had been having an affair for the last year with her divorce attorney from when she and Dad had briefly separated before his death. That same attorney was married. I had found out by accident when I saw them together at a restaurant 40 miles from our hometown. I had followed up, confirmed it, documented it. I had spent 6 months gathering every piece of evidence I could find, every family secret, every skeleton in every closet. And I had organized it all into a comprehensive presentation, complete with documents, photos, and irrefutable proof. I had copied everything on a flash drives. I had 3 of them in my jacket pocket right now, sitting at this wedding reception. Originally, I had planned to wait until the speeches. I was going to politely ask to say a few words, show my little slideshow, and watch my family's perfect facade crumble. But my aunt had just given me an even better opportunity. I stood up again. The room had started to return to its normal buzz of conversation, but everyone still had one eye on me, waiting to see what the family embarrassment would do next. I walked over to the DJ booth. He was a young guy, probably doing this as a side gig. I handed him a flash drive and told him I needed to do a quick presentation, just 5 minutes. I offered him $200 cash. He looked uncertain until I made it $300. He took the flash drive and my money. I walked back to the microphone stand that had been set up for speeches. My aunt was watching me now with narrowed eyes, clearly wondering what I was doing. My sister looked nervous. My brother, who had flown in from New York specifically for this wedding, was checking his phone. The DJ announced that there would be a special presentation before dinner was served. The lights dimmed slightly, and the projector screen that had been set up to show a slideshow of my sister and her husband's relationship photos flickered to life. I took the microphone. I told everyone that I wanted to thank them for coming to celebrate my sister's special day. I said that family was so important, that we should always know the truth about the people we love and support. I said that in the spirit of transparency and honesty, I had put together a little presentation about my wonderful family. The first slide came up. It was my aunt's professional headshot, smiling confidently. The next slide showed the details of her real estate deal with the elderly client, complete with before and after prices, dates, and the documentation of her lies. I explained what she had done in simple terms that everyone could understand. I mentioned that there was an ongoing investigation and that anyone who had done business with her might want to review their transactions carefully. My aunt had gone white. She was halfway out of her seat, but her husband had grabbed her arm, whispering urgently. The next section was about my brother. I showed his smiling face at our father's funeral, looking so successful in his expensive suit. Then I showed the news articles about his firm, the investigation, his name mentioned in connection with potential fraud. I explained that while he hadn't been charged with anything, the walls were definitely closing in. I suggested that maybe the family should be prepared for some difficult news in the coming months. My brother was on his feet now, shouting at me to stop. But the DJ was looking at me, and I was paying him, so the presentation continued. Then came my sister. I showed her graduation photo, her thesis abstract, her acceptance letter to graduate school. Then I showed the emails. Our email exchanges where I had essentially written her thesis for her. I showed the drafts with my edits, my research, my work. I explained that her entire academic foundation was built on my stolen labor, work I had given her because I was a good brother and she had cried and begged. My sister was crying now, real tears, her new husband looking confused and angry beside her. Finally, I got to my mother. I showed a nice family photo of her and Dad from before he got sick. Then I showed the photos I had taken of her with her attorney friend, time-stamped and geolocated. I explained that while Dad was dying, while our family was supposedly rallying together, she had been carrying on an affair with a married man. I mentioned the attorney's name and his wife's name, noting that his wife was actually in attendance tonight, a friend of my sister's from college who happened to be married to Mom's boyfriend. The room exploded. People were shouting. My aunt was screaming at me. My brother was trying to get to the DJ booth to stop the presentation, but the best man was blocking him, looking absolutely fascinated by the chaos. My sister had collapsed in her chair, sobbing. My mother had fled from the room entirely, and the attorney's wife was staring at my mother's empty chair with an expression of dawning horror and rage. I let it play out for a moment, just absorbing the beautiful chaos I had created. Then I turned off the presentation and set down the microphone. I walked over to my sister's table. She looked up at me with mascara running down her face, and I leaned down close enough that only she could hear me over the noise. I told her that I had spent my entire life being treated like I didn't matter, like my thoughts and feelings and accomplishments were worthless compared to hers and our brother's. I told her that tonight. She had asked me to help set up her wedding, to play parking attendant for her guests, but she hadn't wanted me in her wedding party because I was an embarrassment. I told her that our aunt had just publicly humiliated me in front of everyone, and no one had said a word in my defense because they all agreed with her. I told her that I wanted her to remember this night for the rest of her life. Every time she looked at her wedding photos, every time she remembered her special day, I wanted her to remember what happened when she and our family finally pushed me too far. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the chaos was still unfolding. The attorney's wife was screaming at someone. My aunt was on her phone, probably calling her lawyer. My brother was arguing with the DJ. My sister was being comforted by her new husband, who looked like he was reconsidering some life choices. I walked out into the cool evening air and got into my reliable Honda. I sat there for a moment, my hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline, and then I started laughing. It was probably slightly unhinged laughter, but I didn't care. I drove home, ordered pizza, and waited. Update 1. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Within an hour, my phone started exploding with messages. I ignored all of them except one from my college roommate, who had been at the wedding and texted me 3 fire emojis and the words legendary chaos. By the next morning, the family group chat that I was somehow still part of had over 300 messages. I didn't read most of them, but I gathered that the wedding had ended early, my sister and her husband had left without doing their first dance or cutting the cake, and multiple family members were no longer speaking to each other. The attorney's wife had apparently confronted my mother in the parking lot, and hotel security had to intervene. She was filing for divorce and had already retained a pit bull lawyer who was going to make sure her soon-to-be ex lost everything. My aunt's real estate license was now under formal review by the state board. The elderly client's grandson had filed a formal complaint citing my presentation as evidence of a pattern of behavior. Several of her other clients had apparently come forward with similar stories. My brother called me 17 times before finally leaving a voicemail where he alternated between threatening to sue me and begging me to help him with character references when the investigation into his firm concluded. I deleted it without responding. My sister sent me a long text message about how I had ruined the most important day of her life, how I was a terrible person, how she would never forgive me. Then, 3 hours later, she sent another message asking if I had copies of her thesis work because she might need it to defend herself if her graduate school started asking questions. I blocked her number. My mother tried to come to my apartment. I didn't answer the door. She left a note saying we needed to talk, that I had destroyed the family, that Dad would be ashamed of me. I threw the note away. The only message I responded to was from my college roommate. He told me that I was his hero and asked if I wanted to grab a beer. I said yes. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since the wedding. The consequences are still unfolding, and I'm here for all of it. My aunt has temporarily surrendered her real estate license pending the investigation. Her husband filed for separation, apparently deciding that being married to someone under investigation for elder abuse was bad for his own career. She's living with my mother now, which I'm sure is going great for both of them. My brother's firm made the news. The story broke 2 weeks ago, And while he isn't being charged with anything criminal, he's being let go as part of the company's damage control efforts. His name was mentioned in 3 separate articles as someone who worked closely with the executives now under investigation. His professional reputation is ruined. He's moved back home with mom and my aunt. That house must be fun right now. My sister's graduate program did reach out to her with questions about her thesis after someone anonymously sent them the same information I had presented at the wedding. She's currently under academic review. Her new husband apparently had a long conversation with her about honesty and trust. And while they're still together, I heard through mutual acquaintances that they're in intensive couples counseling. The attorney my mother was having an affair with lost everything in his divorce. His wife took him for every penny, got the house, got majority custody of their kids, and made sure every lawyer in a 50-mile radius knew exactly why their marriage ended. He's apparently working for a small firm now and living in a studio apartment. My mother sent me one more letter, delivered through certified mail, so I had to sign for it. In it, she told me that I was no longer welcome at family events, that I had made my choice, and that I was effectively disowned. She said that what I had done was unforgivable, that I had acted out of spite and jealousy, and that I had destroyed multiple lives for no reason other than my own bitterness. I read the letter once, then put it in a folder with all the other documentation of my family's toxicity. Then I wrote her back. I told her that she was right about one thing. I had made my choice. I chose to stop being their emotional punching bag. I chose to stop pretending that their treatment of me was acceptable. I chose to stop protecting people who had never protected me. I told her that everything I revealed was true, that I didn't fabricate anything, and that if the truth destroyed them, maybe they should have lived more honestly. I told her that I didn't want to be at their family events anyway. I was done. I sent the letter and then blocked everyone who shared DNA with me. Update 3. It's been 2 months now. I'm doing better than I have in years. I got a therapist, which I probably should have done a decade ago. She's helping me work through a lot of the trauma from growing up as the scapegoat child. She says what I did at the wedding was definitely a nuclear option, but she understands why I did it. We're working on healthier ways to set boundaries in the future, though I pointed out that I don't actually have any family left to set boundaries with, which made her laugh. I started dating someone. She's a librarian, she's kind, and when I told her the story of what I did at my sister's wedding, she was quiet for a long moment before saying that while it sounded intense, she understood why I felt I had to do it. Then she asked if I was okay, which was the first time anyone had asked me that in longer than I could remember. My college roommate introduced me to his friend group, and I've been hanging out with them regularly. They're good people who treat me like I matter, who listen when I talk, who actually care about my life. It's amazing what a difference it makes to be around people who don't treat you like you're worthless. Work is going well. I'm just a teacher, according to my family, but my students seem to like me, and I got a thank you note from a parent last week saying that I had made a real difference in their kid's life. It meant more to me than any family dinner ever did. I heard through the grapevine that my sister is pregnant. I felt absolutely nothing when I heard that news, which told me everything I needed to know about whether I made the right choice. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember standing at that wedding reception with everyone staring at me, my aunt's words hanging in the air, and no one, not my sister, not my brother, not my mother, saying a single word in my defense. I remember years of being dismissed and mocked and treated like my feelings didn't matter. And I don't wonder anymore. I raised a glass to toast my sister, and before I could speak, my aunt told me to sit down because no one cared what I had to say. She was right about one thing. They didn't care what I had to say, but they'll never forget what I showed them. And I'm finally free.